Hello, I'm Tari. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how to make a Zulu headband. So I've got all the materials that I'll be using today. I'll be using this transparent pipe. You can use a rope. Sometimes I use a rope, but when you're getting a rope, don't get rope that doesn't burn well, or rather rope that doesn't melt as it burns like this one. Try and get rope that will melt as you burn it. So I will show you the trick that I use when I'm using a rope to finish it off at the end of this video. So I also have some cups here, these clasps to finish off the product when I'm done. I've got a lobster hook, some jump rings, and I have these pins with a little loop at the end. I'll also be using 2 needles, a long one and a short one, and a thick needle. It doesn't have to be curved like this one. It can be any type, but just a thick needle that can pierce through this pipe. I also have my beads, marker, beading thread, scissors, some matches, and a candle. So let's start. So the very first thing to do is to put markings on your pipe or your rope to demarcate where you're going to put the designs. So I'm going to mark just here and here because my design is going to come right here in the middle, and then on the sides I'm going to have one solid color. So you put your markings so that you know where to start introducing the design. All right, I'm going to be using this light blue as my main color. This is the color that is going to be on the sides, and then when I get to this point I'm going to start introducing other colors. So I have threaded the small needle. For the very first part I'm going to use this small needle, and then I will change to the long needle. So I'm going to be picking the beads from the thread. I'm not going to separate them from the thread. I'll just be picking from this thread. So firstly you pick one bead, right? You bring it all the way down almost to the end of the thread, and then we're going to make one big knot. And by that I mean you keep making small knots on top of each other until you have a big knot, the way I'm doing it. So that's the first step. You already have your bead on the thread, and then you start making knots. So you keep doing that. As you can see, mine are sitting on the same spot. So far this is what I have. I'm going to keep doing that until it's nice and big. So this is what I have. I have a nice big knot, and I'm just gonna test it to see if my bead can go through it, to see if the knot will go through the bead, and it doesn't. It's quite big. So now I'm just going to cut the tail off, and I'm gonna burn this little guy here, this little tail. I'm gonna burn it so that by no means will it unravel. So I'm just gonna use a candle. So this has to be a very quick job because you don't want to burn yourself and you don't want to burn the string too much. So just slightly, and then you give it a press there. So that's it. Blow out the candle. We don't want any accidents. So now you take your pipe, and on one end you're going to pierce the pipe using the big needle, the thick needle. So you just take your cup or this clasp, just put it on the pipe, right, to see how much space it will cover. And while you have it on, you can just pierce with the thick needle on the pipe, like that there. Now you take the needle and you put it in through the pipe from the inside, like that. You pull. There, it's sitting nicely. You see that? So at this point, you can actually change your needles, remove the short needle, and use the long needle. So I'm going to thread the long needle. I'm going to put my thread on the long needle. So now that I've threaded my long needle, I'm going to start picking beads from this string of beads. So for the first step, you can just fill your needle with beads, like that there. You fill it with beads, and I'm going to wrap these beads around the pipe. So when wrapping the beads on the pipe, you hold at the end where the beads end here. Make sure there are no gaps in between here, but don't make it too tight. You see that? Just give them enough room to sit neatly, and then you begin to wrap. So I mostly turn the pipe so that my left hand can give the beads a light press as they sit on the pipe, and then on the right side I just move slightly to give the beads room to sit neatly. Like that. I turn the pipe slowly until all the beads are sitting neatly on the pipe. Now at this point we need to secure this thread so that the beads remain seated neatly around the pipe. So I wrap my thread 1, 2, 3 times. On the third time I take my needle and put it through the beads until the needle is out through the very last bead here. So 8 or 6 beads before the last bead is where I put my needle through the pipe, like that. I just put my needle through 2 or 3 beads at a time, just to make life easy for me. And through the last one, like that, and I pull tight. So here we are. The beads are sitting neatly around the pipe, and here's the thread coming out through the very last bead. So now it's time to pick more beads. Take the needle and put it through these beads, like that. So when you are starting, you can actually pick a bit more beads. I like to fill my needle with beads 2 times, then I wrap only when I am starting. But when I get to this part here where the pipe begins to curve, I reduce my beads. I just fill my needle once and then I wrap so that they sit neatly around this area. And then when I get to this part, I can pick a bit more beads as well. So I'm going to fill my needle with beads again. And then I will wrap those beads around the pipe. There. I'm going to put my hand here where the beads end so that they are not separated, so that they stay close to each other. That's the only way they can sit neatly around the pipe. So now I'm going to start wrapping again, using my left thumb to give the beads just a gentle press, gently, so that they just sit neatly like that there. And also push the beads up a bit so that there aren't any gaps between the lines of the beads. So yeah, you just keep wrapping, pushing them up slightly. I wrap some more until I'm done. And done. So I'm going to repeat the process that I did the first time. I'm going to wrap this thread around the pipe 3 times, and then I'll take my needle and put it through the beads. Make sure that they're sitting neatly. Remember to pull your thread so that the beads sit neatly. We don't want them loose. Now I'm going to put my needle through the last 3 beads like that. Okay, looks like something happened here. I have to fix this. Don't hesitate to fix any mistakes. Don't keep going on with errors. Okay, so I'll just put my needle through the last 2 beads. I pull my thread and repeat process. So that's how it goes for the first step. You keep doing that until you get to your first marking. So I'm going to keep wrapping the picking beads and wrapping them around the pipe until I get to this point here, where I'm going to start introducing other colors. So yeah, be right back. So here I am. I'm going to start introducing other colors. But try by all means to make sure that you start introducing your colors from the inside of the pipe. When it's sitting like this here, this is the inside. So make sure that your beads end here on the inside so that your new colors start on the inside and end on the inside, so that on the outside all we see is just neatness and beauty. So now I'm going to put a border which will be separating my colors. So I'll be using black as my border. I'm going to start by picking 18 beads and see if they will go around my pipe. I'm just going to have my border going around the pipe once, and then I will put another color. So I'm just going to see if 18 is enough. So I'm going to wrap gently, and it looks like 18 beads, exactly what I need. You see that? The black beads were able to go around the pipe once. So now that I know that I need 18 beads to go around the pipe, I'll see how many beads will be filling my needle and how many lines I will have for my next color. So I'm gonna pick yellow next, and I'm gonna put these nice yellow beads on my needle. So there I have my needle filled with these nice yellow beads. I'm going to wrap them around the pipe. All right, so let's see how this goes. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So I'm going to be working with 4 lines throughout for all the colors. So now that I need to put black beads again to separate the yellow with the next color, I need to make sure that it is the black line will be, this first black line will be in line with the next one. So I'm just going to remove 2 beads because it looks like I have a bit too many beads there. It will not sit neatly. So I'm going to remove these beads, and then I'm going to secure the yellow beads before I continue. And as I was doing before, I'm just going to wrap this thread 3 times around the pipe. So that's 1. That's 2 and 3. And the 3rd time, I'm going to put my needle through these beads. Make sure they're not going anywhere. So I take my needle and put it through the beads, pulling gently to avoid knots. I'm going to put my needle through the last 3 beads. Hope that's clear. Yeah. All right. So there I'm done. It's time to pick black beads again for my border and another color. So I take my black beads. I'm going to pick 18 beads like I did before, and then I'll pick another color, and I'm going to repeat the process. So I've picked my 18 black beads, and before I pick the next color, I'm just going to wrap these around the pipe and see if they're going to sit neatly around the pipe, and see if they are enough. See if they're enough, or I need to add, and that is just right. That is just right. I have enough beads. they're going around the pipe once, and that's okay. So now I can pick the next color. So I'm picking 18 beads, but this number will always differ depending on the size of beads that you are using. So you can just do a trial and error and see how many beads you will need to wrap around your piping once. So I decided to go with navy blue for my next color. And I filled my needle once with beads. If you do not want the trouble of having a bit too many beads or a bit too little beads, you can always count your beads and find out how many beads you need to have 4 lines or 3 lines or however many lines you may want to work with. So I'm going to wrap mine around the pipe. Giving them a gentle press with my left thumb to make sure that they are sitting neatly. And I have my 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm going to secure the thread and I'll pick more beads. So now I've picked 18 black beads again for my border and red for my next color, and I will wrap them around the pipe. So that is actually how it goes. You keep repeating those steps until you get to the point where you marked where the colors end. So I'm going to keep wrapping my beads using different colors until I get to this point. So this is what I have done so far. This is how I used my colors. And now I'm going to go back to my main color, the light blue. And before you go back to your main color, don't forget to put black for your border. So always before you start your new color, if you're doing borders, put the border first. So I'm going to continue with my light blue until I get to this point, and then I will show you how to finish it off. So I've made a lot of progress. I'm almost done. So I just want to show you what to do when you get to this part. So I've picked a few beads to cover the very last bit of the pipe before I start putting the clasps. So I'm just going to wrap it around the pipe. And then now that all the beads are on the pipe, I'm going to wrap this thread around the pipe 3 times. That's 1, that's 2, and 3. Now I'm going to secure this thread. Pull tight. I put my needle through the last 3 beads and I pull tight. So now I'm going to change needles. I always like to use a short needle for this process because I don't want to risk breaking my needle. The one I'm using is not the flexible type that doesn't break. This one can break. It's good for picking beads. It picks beads very well as compared to the one that's flexible. So I'm just going to thread my short needle. So I've threaded my short needle. I'm just going to pierce through the piping. You can always use the thick needle to help during this process, but I think I can pull it off just with this one. So just where the last bead is, that is where I'm going to pierce through onto the other side in between the lines. That is where my needle is going to come out through like that. and I'm going to pull gently. And there, all the thread has gone through the pipe and it's now coming out through the other side like that. So I'm going to do this process a couple of times, 2 other times that is. I'm just gonna put my needle through the pipe, let it come out through the other end, in between the lines of those beads, like that there. Just gonna make sure that the thread is sitting neatly. That is the only way it can go through the pipe nicely, and on the side it will not remain untidy. So I'm gonna fix this bit and make sure my thread is sitting nicely there. So there, it's not showing. So now I'm going to make a knot at this point, but where my thread is, it's not a very good spot to make a knot. I always like to make my knots on the inside of the pipe here, where it doesn't show on this side here on the inside. So I'm just gonna put my needle through this pipe one more time and let it come out through the other end, and then I will make a knot. So I'm going to leave my loop open like that, put my needle through the pipe and let it come out very close to that loop. Alright, so now I'm going to take my needle and put it through the loop like that, and then I'm going to pull gently. There, sitting nicely, neatly. So I'm just going to make another knot because I don't want these beads to ever fall off. I'm just going to make one more knot and we'll move on to the clasps. So I've made my second knot, and as you can see, my thread is sitting neatly there. So I'm done with this part. I'm just going to cut the thread and I'm going to move on to the clasp. So gather all the pieces. So I forgot to mention that you must leave a bit of space here for the clasp to sit neatly. So I'm just going to put that there, and then I'm going to make a little hole through the pipe with a thick needle like that. Now that I have done so, just not on the thread, okay, just on top of the thread like that, right? And then I'm going to take my pin, this one with the little hoop there, and I'm going to put it through the piping. It doesn't have a sharp end, that's why I'm using the needle to make a piercing on the pipe, so it becomes easy to put the pin through the pipe. I put it like that there, and then I take my pliers. I'm going to bend the pin like that, pinch it a bit like that there, and then I'm going to take my cup and put it back on the piping like that. I pull my pin upwards like that. So I'm just gonna cut this pin because it is way too long. Clearly it is way too long, but before I do that, I'm just gonna pinch this cup clasping a bit. It's got these gaps here, so I'm going to pinch it so that it's tight around the pipe like that. So that's better. And now I'm going to cut off this pin. I'm gonna leave just a short size of the pin. And now that I have cut it, I'm gonna use the round nose pliers to make a loop, and you do that by bending in the opposite direction of where you want your loop to be in first. You move your pliers upwards a little bit, then you turn it like that to make a loop. So if you pull it upwards a bit and then push it forward, you should have something like this, a nice little loop. So now that I have done that, I'm going to take one jump ring and I'm going to hold it with my pliers to open it. I hold on one end here and open it with the other one. These jump rings are quite hard. That's why I'm using my pliers and yeah, the round nose pliers to open it and to close it. With some jump rings you can get away with just holding it with your hand and then opening it and closing it. So now I've put it through my